Now, I hear this all the time. It's a constant complaint, but it's just so not true. Hey, it's Don. Today I'm going to address a comment that's left constantly. I hear all the time that there's just no way that you're going to find all the stuff that I talk about, that I sell, that I show on my videos. I hear it all the time. And this isn't an insult to anybody, and I'm not trying to call anybody out or anything else like that. I just wanted to address that because I get tons of people saying that, you don't give away where you find your stuff at. It's just not possible. There's no way it's out there because I don't see it. That's what I hear people telling me. If they don't see it, it must not be available. Now, I can tell you straight up, honestly, that every single item that I show and that we've purchased is from a traditional sourcing avenue. There is no secret basement deal in building X somewhere in some secret lab that has a bunch of paper that holds it just for me. It's just not the way it works. I find the stuff that I show all the time, and I'm not anywhere near picking up the stuff that I personally could get. I don't buy it all. There's a lot of it that just goes past me because I'm full or there's nothing that really strikes my eye. I don't grab everything up even just here in my local area. I've been all over the country too. We've sourced in California. I've been to Nevada. I've been all through New England, all through the South, Florida, Mississippi, all the way through Austin, Texas area. We've driven I-75 from Florida all the way up to Ohio, into Michigan, Upper Peninsula. I've sourced up in the Mackinac Island area, again, all the way through New England. And we've driven all the way across through to Texas, as I said. And I've hit probably, a large chunk of those areas. And I've been able to find the same thing. Now, where do I specifically get them? I'm not going to tell you the people I'm purchasing from because that's just not how I work. But number one source, if you don't have pickers, and I do have some pickers still, to be honest. Large chunk, including the last video I just showed with the 3 different pickups with all that paper items, was not from a picker. None of that stuff came from a picker. I knew 2 of the people who are other dealers, but they're not pickers of mine. They just happened to have something that was up for sale, not just to me. It wasn't a special deal. Anybody could have bought it for what I paid for it. I just happened to be the one that asked about paper. That's the difference. I asked about it. Now, estate sales are awesome for almost everything I show you. Flea markets. Again, antique flea markets. If you're going to go to just the average, everyday, run-of-the-mill flea market that's going to have bootleg DVDs and CDs and stuff out there, chances are you're not going to find vintage postcards that are worth anything or any of that kind of stuff. No disrespect to those types of flea markets. I've ran my share going through tons of those types of places myself. But again, you need an antique, a vintage one. A lot of those may be like once a month or something. They're not necessarily going to be every single week of the month. Some, like in Webster's in Florida, used to be on Mondays, and it opened up. You could start buying with the flashlight at 4 in the morning, and that's when I was there. There was only a few vendors that early, but I hit them up first. I offered to help set up if that's what it took just to get to their items, whatever it takes. Those are always good sources, including still to this day. Those are other dealers that I'm buying from at a flea market. They don't do the same structure of business that we do. They don't do the same structure of business that most people out there do. If you know your stuff in some categories, that's how you rake out. The folks that sell at flea markets don't know everything out there. They know way better than I do in a ton of different areas, but they're areas I don't mess with. So I picked areas that the majority of the people that I could buy from don't mess with. That was intentional. I didn't pick an item like coffee cups or Chinaware that everybody out there is trying to grab in the traditional markets. So with like stuff like that, they sell on eBay. They sell in a traditional market just as well too. So there's many avenues to sell those. So they're always sought after. I've made money on them, don't get me wrong, but it's a learning curve for me getting into that. They're breakable. They take up space. So we've centered it on things that are small, take up very little space, but yet have a huge, monstrous ROI. Flea markets, again, that's what I'm saying, flea markets, estate sales. Usually at an estate sale, there'll be tables in the front with little doodads and stuff. That's usually all I've ever went through when we first started. Toy room I'd always hit at an estate sale. A music room if that's what they had. The bookcases I'd always hammer. The display cases if they had them. The box lots, the garage, the basement, the attic. I'm not a big linen person. I don't mess with a lot of the fabrics. I've sold tons of fabrics, don't get me wrong, but it takes up space, and there's many other reasons why I just don't like to mess with them. They're heavier, shipping costs, and I just don't mess with those that much. You got to spread them out to photo them and measuring and all that kind of stuff. I'm just not up on it. It just reminds me too much of clothing for the bigger items and things like that. So if you know what you're looking for, you pick items that other people aren't looking for or think there isn't a value. That's where this comes in. The stuff that I buy from other people like a vast majority of the time because they don't know these items. If I go to an antique mall, for an example, which is a place I sourced for the last 25, 30 years probably, in all honesty. Yeah, it probably would be 30 years. I've hammered antique malls. That's where I got my start, was antique malls. We'd hit 75, we'd hit all the antique malls up 75, all the way across from I-10, heading all the way to Mississippi. We'd hit Alabama, all that way. We hit all the ones going up to my family up in Ohio, all the way through Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia. I've even went through the coastal area, A1A area. We've hit all of those. You know, South Carolina, North Carolina, all that whole way, all the way up to New England. We've done the same thing. I've done this for years. You've just got to know what to look for. The location isn't necessarily the issue at all these days. These days, like around here, and I know it is in your area, almost everywhere, even if it's not really close, there's going to be places that sell stuff locally, but they sell them online as well these days. Around here, there's auction companies, estate sale companies that will sell stuff on a local, smaller, like a auction site. Many auction companies use these sites. It's not necessarily always Auction Zip. There are some local ones if you look up local vintage antique auction or something along that line in your local area. Look it up by zip code. There's plenty of sites, Auction Zip, statesales.net, and all of those sorts of things. High Bid's another place. You can buy a lot of stuff online. I would highly recommend buying them where you can see them better locally and stuff so you don't get taken and things like that. It's never great to buy something sight unseen, just basing it on pictures, in my opinion, if you're going to resell anyway. Antiques, collectibles, different story. If you're a collector, they're looking for something specific. They know what they're looking for and the whole works. But that's, again, why this all works, because I know what people are looking for in these categories that I sell in. I know where to think about getting them. If you ever been to, like, say, a Cracker Barrel, if you look around the room, all usually around the walls and stuff are antiques and collectibles. There's places like that that go under, especially in the last 2 years, like restaurants in your local area that ceased to exist, and all the stuff inside the building was probably sold locally at a local auction. Somebody got all the signs, all that kind of stuff. That's someplace a lot of people may not think about. Restaurant liquidation sales. I've bought from a shoe repair store before. We bought stuff off the wall, antiques, collectibles. There was photos and some postcards, even in that place. Military shows are a great place to find paper items, and cheap paper items too, because most people at those assorted places don't usually mess with just standardized postcards. They usually get them if there's some military in there, and usually I don't pay much for them. Garage sales, I don't really do that much. For me, the stuff that I like and look for isn't going to be found in a garage sale. Now, don't get me wrong. We've bought our share of GameCubes, PS4s, Nintendos, Ataris, handhelds, Game Boys, all that kind of stuff at garage sales and stuff. I've bought reel-to-reels, reel-to-reel machines, records, all that kind of stuff. But it's probably the least favorite of mine, only because I might have to go to 10 places just to get something good to make the day worthwhile around here, garage sale-wise. I know Craigslist in some areas is good. Up here, Craigslist is horrid. I say that because 95% of the people up here probably who list on Craigslist are other dealers, just trying to sell their wares using Craigslist as opposed to eBay or something. Facebook, same thing. I can never buy anything on Facebook around here. It's probably either I've seen it already, it's from another dealer, or they've already picked out everything worthwhile and they're just selling off their leftover junk. I do that stuff, so that's why I say that's usually what I run into there. The sources I've mentioned so far are 100% places I've acquired every single thing I've shown in this video at many, many different occasions. Again, I do have pickers, so everything I show you isn't from pickers. Everything in the last video was not from a picker. Nothing I showed you, none of those hundreds of items I purchased were from a picker. None of them. But again, I've shown you tons of other items that were. You don't have to have a picker. Think outside the box. There's clubs, collectors clubs for things. There's button societies. There's collectors clubs for military groups. There's historical societies. Many of these places sometimes have local newsletters for their members and stuff, like the Button Society. You'll see ads for people selling stuff. For military society, there'll be mailing lists. They'll send you a notice when they get certain things, and I sign up for a lot of notices. Large chunk of what we find, I only have to go out of the house just to pick something up. Usually all the dirty work, searching and contacting people and going back and forth, happens in my house or my place of business. It's the research aspect to find these types of places. There's these types of clubs for everything you could possibly imagine. There's Pokemon clubs, movie clubs. A lot of the people in those clubs will be collectors. A lot of those people sell their stuff from time to time, thin out their collection, retire from it, or move on to a different field or something else. There's tons of places, if you just think outside the box just a little more, places you would never think of. In the past, we checked out who was going bankrupt, which buildings were going to be liquidated and things like that. And we went to pretty much anyone we could get to when we first started to see what shows up at places like that. I've bought antique and vintage stuff that I show you in my videos at school sales, from public education auctions. Auctions from like the library system from some big city or some local place. Libraries are great places to get them. Colleges around here, some of them have big, huge, massive sales of some of their holdings. People donate to these types of places. So that's another great place. College books I've talked about before, we can get them free at campuses many times just because at the end of the session, lots of professors dump out and clean out their office because they know next time around they'll have new books. They might not be teaching the same classes. Many reasons why you can get stacks of books from campuses, either at community colleges or universities. Universities are always better because they're usually books that will last and won't be specific to, say, a community college. Many community college will have books specific only to that community college, and those are usually not worth messing with. And this is just a little bit of the places that you can source at. You would be surprised at how much stuff is around your local area. Now, I know there are some folks out there who live an hour or two away from sourcing avenues. Like for us, I hear a lot of people saying, you know, you need to check out a Goodwill Bins, and you might have a different opinion on thrift stores and stuff. The closest Goodwill Bins for me is like 3 hours away. And we've been by it once before, and it looked like a rat race in there. There were people basically fighting over stuff there. It was just packed in there. It didn't appeal to me at all. I'm not going to fight to get something. I'm not interested in raising my blood pressure over something stupid like that. And people contact me constantly on a daily basis, finding exactly the type of stuff that I show, asking for advice. My Patreons constantly are finding it. And it's from their own skill. It's not me walking them to one of these places. It's them listening to many of the videos and listening to places I talk about, and they've looked outside the box. There's people in my Patreon who have just found boxes of stuff. Some of it rivals anything that I've found. So I know there's tons of this stuff out there. And they don't just live here. They're all over the place. You know, it's available. You just really, really, really have to look outside the box. If you're going to come at this as, I'm never going to find it, you probably will never find it. You've already given up before you even started. And that's just not the way to get into this. Everything that I've sold or sell right now, we've got a lot of time invested into learning it, researching it, figuring out what's worth something, where to find it. I didn't just start selling the stuff you see one day and then it's been, you know, gravy ever since. It's been a slow process to get to a point where this is constantly coming in, where sales are constantly coming in, where we've got enough inventory where enough sales are constantly going on a daily basis that our numbers are really solid, you know, making really good money, doing the reselling aspect of it. But it's investment. It's investment into some researching books that are very expensive in some cases. And then again, the rest of it's my time. When I'm spending time digging up and looking up, researching prices and stuff on stuff because I don't know them yet, I can't do other things. So it slows you down when you first start off. You can't just go cold turkey from selling whatever you're selling to flipping to vintage stuff like this. I cut it off slowly. We started whittling out clothing. We started buying less of it. We started pumping up more of our time into listing, vintage items and smaller items. Items that I can store in a small area. They're easy to handle. They're easy to ship. Quantity. If you're going to buy bulk, you got to be able to store bulk, and you've got to be able to list bulk. So again, I've picked the stuff that's the lowest lying fruit. Most of the stuff I show you is junk to most anybody who's a big time dealer around. The bigger dealers are in expensive furniture and big advertising pieces and pottery and glass and frames and paintings and oriental rugs and just fabulous bronzes and things like that. All great stuff. But, that's out of my league of interest. It's out of my league of space or knowledge in many cases. I don't know the difference between one oriental rug and another one. I know some Native American pieces. I can tell you Navajo, Plains Indians, Cherokee, Seminole for sure. There's tons of nations around here, and I've seen stuff from so many of them. So the bottom line, though, is this stuff is out there. It's so not true that you're not going to find this stuff. I would never be able to find this stuff if it wasn't out there. I wouldn't be able to constantly be bringing in hundreds of items on a daily basis if it wasn't out there. It's just not the case. It's just me being done with everything else and not investing any time into what everybody else sells, but investing all my time, energy, knowledge, learning stuff into these sorts of items. And that goes into learning where to find them the best places. There's no secret. I have no secret power or magic skills. It didn't happen. I just have spent a lot of time. This is what I do. This is my full-time job. And this has been my full-time income for over a decade now. We've been selling online and platforms for 27 years, heading towards the 30-year mark. So I've got a ton of time and energy invested into this. The only difference between my ability to find the stuff and other folks' ability to find the stuff is the time I've invested into this. That's honestly the only difference that I personally can see, because I can go to almost anywhere I go, and find the stuff that I sell. Anywhere. You've seen videos of me outsourcing. I pull up the same stuff over and over again. There's nothing secret about it. It's out there. It's just might be buried under a table. It might be thrown in the back because no one thinks it's important or valuable, but it's out there. It's just not true that you're not going to find it. But anyway, that's what I have for you today. Hopefully that gave you some ideas, some thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified if I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell all your friends.
Ladies, prepare for action. Fire red, beautiful. Fire rose, so smooth. Fire peach, so creamy.
Beautiful.
New Laren Cosmetics are here with 23 new extra lush Laren colors.
So smooth, so creamy, so moist.
New from Laren to let you be
beautiful now.